Welcome back to Pistons Jack Weekly, where I'll be recapping all the latest news and results for your Detroit Pistons using the 313 formula. We'll cover 3 likes, 1 dislike, and 3 things to keep an eye on with the Detroit Pistons. Now, let's get straight into it. The video, as you can see, is titled Playoff Pistons, and that's my first like of the past week. And overall, the Pistons currently sit seventh in the East, and prior to yesterday's loss to the Bulls, they were fifth in the East. And you know, I know the East is a mess right now, but just to see the Pistons sitting in that position in the standings, like it's just so exciting. Like I just don't it's just exciting. It's something I constantly want to talk about because you know pretty much the past 4 or 5 seasons, after the first week of the season, the Pistons have just been in the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the East and probably the NBA. So, we're now a full pretty much month into the NBA season, and for the Pistons to be sitting at seventh and were as high as fifth only 24 hours ago, it's exciting. So I'm recording this the day after the Bulls defeat, but in the past week and a day, the Pistons go 3-2. They had a narrow loss to the Bucks that they honestly should have won. Um, they had many chances to win that game, most notably with Ron Holland missing 2 free throws with the scores tied with a second to go. If he hits one of those, the Pistons win. But look, I'm not getting on the rookie too much. But yesterday's loss against the Bulls was probably the most disappointing. But I think now with 24 hours to reflect on it, there's a few reasons, one of which will be in my dislike as to why I think they just had an off night, but we'll talk about that later. But in terms of positives, like the Pistons overall, a 10th in defensive rating, which is pretty much the universal metric that most people use when looking at who has the best defense. Once again, prior to the Bulls game, they were sixth in the East. So considering the personnel they have, we spoke about this a little bit on last week's episode, but they've gone way higher up. Now, I think when we spoke last time, they were like 16th in the NBA. So they've jumped a whole nother kind of 5, 6 teams since then, which is a considerable jump. And, like I said, they were almost the top five defense for a minute there. So I think the fact JB Bickerstaff has this team bought in on defense like this is incredibly exciting because I just feel like every good team, I know there's outliers, but when you look back at teams that perennially make the playoffs and actually go far, I just feel like they have a defensive identity and their foundation defensively solid. And the Pistons, it's nice to see considering the personnel they have, like the Pistons just be where they are defensively because they don't have a Asar Thompson. They're struggling at the center position to get consistent 48 minutes of consistent defense at that position. Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham in the past have been labelled as kind of their effort has been questioned on that end. And just to see them this season as a team being able to net these results so early, it's a huge positive. And even with the loss yesterday to the Bulls, where I think the Bulls put up 124 points, which is probably the most since the Knicks game they got blown out in. Apart from that, most of these games, the games are so close. And I just feel like, I don't know how much this really counts for, but when you look back at the successful teams of the Pistons past, they're built from defense and grit. And, I think to see the Pistons slowly molding towards that direction, it is a positive and should leave fans feeling confident and excited for the future. Even if they're going to have frustrating games like last night. So I think the playoffs, like, I'm really not trying to be clickbaity with this. Like, I wouldn't probably put money on them making the playoffs. But honestly, there's no reason why they can't be in the play-in tournament. Like, seriously. And I'll leave you with this nugget. And I've been of the opinion that the Pistons come trade deadline that Trajan Langdon might look to pivot and, you know, not tank, but, trade one of the vets to get a pick and try and get back into the draft at, boost his lottery odds. But it was interesting. Sam Vecini on the Game Theory podcast on his most recent episode was talking about the fact he has some pretty, he wasn't reporting, but he had some, I can't remember the phrase he used, but informed, he had been told and had an informed opinion that there is a clear directive from ownership to show improvement this season. And if you can, go back and watch it. It was on the episode where they were ranking the tanking teams, him and Bryce Simon. Shout out to Motor City Hoops and the Pistons Pulse. But there was just a little nugget there where he thinks the Pistons, if they are in the playing contention, they're going to push. They are not going to, after trade deadline, plummet to the bottom. So I think the play-in is kind of like where this team will probably end up, barring, something unfortunate happening. I just think what we've seen, the playoffs are on the cards, but I think the play-in in particular is a real thing Pistons fans should be expecting of this team. I hope I don't have to eat my words because we're still haven't played 20 games. We've had seasons before where the Pistons start well and it turns into nothing, but I think the play-in is a real thing, and therefore the playoffs are a real thing for this team. So that's my first like. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts because, like I said, I've been of the opinion this team will be competitive, but ultimately will probably pivot towards, trying to get a high draft pick post-trade deadline. But if they continue playing this type of basketball where they're a 35-36 pace win team in this Eastern Conference and are going to be in the play-in conversation, sounds like the directive is win as many games as possible, which I think is a good thing. I do. It's really changed how I'm looking at things now. Because Sam Vecini, I think is a pretty plugged in guy, and I back what he says, and I take that quite seriously. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, I think the play-in definitely playoffs. Why not? Second big in the past week. But really probably the past fortnight, and I didn't give him any love on the previous week's episode, but Malik Beasley, he has to be the best value signing in the NBA right now. The Pistons signed him to a 1-year, $6 million deal last offseason. It was a signing I was excited about, but also I wasn't because the Pistons already traded for Tim Hardaway Jr., they'd already signed that shoot first bucket getter type wing that doesn't really defend. So I wasn't going crazy for Malik Beasley, but I tell you what, man, I should have been more excited, because $6 million for the production he's giving this team on the court is crazy. And I'm not even mentioning it off the court, but he's had now 5 straight 20-point games. So he started a couple of those with THJ out, but it included 2 26-point games, I believe, both season highs. He's actually scored 20 in 6 of his last 7 games. And I just think, I talk on this, well, I've spoken a lot about this with my guy Cody on our post-game live streams. Malik Beasley's threes, he might, last night against the Bulls, he shot 5 of 14. And, if you just look at the box score, that's not that efficient. But when you're watching the game, he's the one Piston I feel right now that when the Pistons are down 8, like they were in Toronto as well, or they're down and they just need a spark, he's the guy back to hit a 3 and to get the momentum restarted. Every shot he hits, it feels like it's just it either breaks the other team's momentum or just powers the Pistons forward and keeps that momentum going. And he's never going to stop shooting, and I love that. I love that he's shoot first. I just think he's been awesome. I do. I know I've had some things on the live streams where I've spoken about him trying to do a little bit too much off the dribble, but I think that's more of a personnel thing and the lack of ball handling Detroit have. But I think he's been exceptional. To be getting this production out of a guy on $6 million a year is incredible. Great signing from Trajan. I'm starting to think they should extend him. I don't know how that works and when they can offer him an extension, but yeah, and the reason I'm so big on the extension is, yes, the on-court stuff's awesome, but the leadership and the vibes he brings and the energy He's always high energy. He's celebrating. He's a bit of like, he likes to do celebrations, but that's perfect for the team. Like to see Jaden Ivey like doing the shimmy with him, and some of the other dancers, like that stuff matters because you have to remember where this team was last year, just like getting pummeled each and every night, like losing confidence. Like Malik Beasley brings confidence all the time. And I think it's so good for these young guys to just keep the spirits up. Like even when they have a loss, like yesterday against the Bulls, like I guarantee you Malik Beasley tomorrow, like again, whenever they play next, he's going to come out, he's going to play with high energy. And, that's why it's so important when the Pistons are down by like 6. And because I still feel like this team, why they've struggled to close, is because of last year and all that losing. The confidence still hasn't been fully built back, or they haven't figured it out. So it's so key to have someone like Beasley who comes in energy all the time, can make those key shots when they need them, just to keep things ticking and keep the younger guys, spirits high and confidence up. Like he's just been awesome, awesome. Like I've been so impressed with him on and off the floor. And the Pistons actually had a podcast with Malik, which I highly recommend everyone goes and watches. It's on their YouTube channel, or I haven't checked if they have a podcast feed, but if they do, go check it out. There's some funny stuff in there, and it's cool like hearing about his ties to Detroit. Third like of the week, I'll probably just get through this one quickly. Fringe players stepping up in big moments. So the Pistons were without Jaden Ivey for one game last week, and they also lost Tim Hardaway Jr. for 2.5 games because of the head laceration, which was scary. So I'm happy he's now back and playing. But Wendell Moore and Marcus Sasser provided huge minutes in the past week. JB Bickerstaff said it after the Raptors game, but there's no way the Pistons would have won that game against the Raptors without Wendell Moore and Marcus Sasser. And I'm being 100% serious. Like, those two made key shots, key plays on both ends. Like, Sasser had an incredible, like, he stole it from Jakob Poeltl, like, anticipated the pass into the post, stole it from Jakob Poeltl, took it down the other end, layup. Like, he hit couple of key threes, I think, or he had his foot on the line. Wendell Moore was making plays in transition. Like, they do not win that game against the Raptors without those two, truly. So that was huge to get that win, because the Raptors have been, their record looks, they're one of the worst teams in the NBA, but they've actually been a more frisky than their record would suggest. But just to get that win was huge, because only a night or two before they had that kind of tough loss to the Bucks. So those two were huge in that game. And then against the Bucks as well, both of them were awesome. Wendell Moore, another awesome game, hit a really key corner three. I think what I like about Wendell is he doesn't do anything great. He does a lot of things like solid. Like, he can dribble, he's got good size, can make plays on either end. Like, he'll hit it, bob up for a three, finish in transition. Like, just that element of like a wing that can kind of dribble, pass, and shoot is it's just so valuable to have that as depth on your bench. And I did not expect him to come in out of nowhere and have those two games against the Bucks and Raptors. So huge shout out to him. And then Marcus Sasser against the Bucks hit numerous key shots in the fourth. He hit a ridiculous three to tie it up at the end of regulation, or close to it. And like, just a big shot maker. And I've really enjoyed Sasser's ball security, and just, he might not be the best playmaker, but I feel like just from what we've seen in the past week, he hasn't turned it over a lot. And, we've had the other Pistons starting guards struggle with turnovers and their handle at times. So Sasser's ball security and that kind of thing and shot creation has been a nice element. And just a shout out to those two. Moving on now to my biggest dislike, and it has to be the NBA schedule makers. Honestly, like, following the Pistons' loss to the Bulls yesterday, the Pistons have played the most games in the NBA of any team. They've played 16 games in like 30 days or something, or less, like 25 days. Like, like they've played 3 sets of back-to-backs. And like, I would have to gather that's the most in the NBA. And their most recent game against the Bulls was their 5th in 7 days. Like, it's just been a brutal start, and I know technically, like, obviously the schedule evens out for everyone, but for them to be 7-9 after such a brutal schedule full of travel and back-to-backs, I think is a pretty impressive start. And, I think the thing that frustrates me the most, because like I said, obviously the schedule evens out in the end, I'd like to think. But they've had 2 of their 3 back-to-backs. The second game of those back-to-backs has been a home game. And that just annoys me because if you're going to have back-to-backs, I just would like them, particularly for this team, to be both on the road. I think home games are so important, especially for teams like the Pistons who are on the rise, because I feel like home games, you want to have a day rest before, and having to get in late the night before and then play another game. It just feels like you lose a bit of the God, this is such a bad term, but just the good stuff of having a home game, like of being able to sleep in your own bed, get some rest, play in front of your home fans, have the crowd behind you. Like, it just feels like you lose something about having a home game on the back-to-back. Whereas if it's on the road, it's just like it's tough anyway. Like, home games, I just think should have a lot more value. And when you're losing them, when you're playing your home games are on the second night of back-to-back, I just feel like it's not fair. So I don't know if every team has the same amount of home games on a back-to-back. I can't imagine they do, but just the fact 2 of their 3 back-to-backs have been like that, just that's the bit that annoys me the most. But maybe I'm overthinking that. But it has to be my dislike. I could have spoken about the defense at the big position, but I feel like I did enough on that following the Bulls game on the live stream. And honestly, now that I've had some time to reflect on that game, the Bulls were just incredibly hot from the field, like N3, made 24 threes. The Pistons probably pinch that game if Zach LaVine doesn't just go nuclear in the 4th, but he does. And yeah, there's certainly some frustrating elements which could have been spoken about here, but I think I've done enough on that. And I think the schedule, now that I've had time to reflect, kind of sticks out as the big dislike for me. Now, 3 things to keep an eye on here to close it out. Number 1, are the Pistons NBA Cup bound? Like, can they win this thing? They won both Cup games last week against the Heat and Raptors, both nail biters. Obviously, the Heat game was crazy the way they won that. That was the basketball gods giving them some luck with Eric Spoelstra calling a timeout they didn't have. But they're 2-0, and they have 2 more games. One against the Bucks, which is at home, and then one against the Pacers on the road. Now, if the Pistons win both these and go 4-0 in the NBA Cup, they will advance to the knockout stage. But the knockout round, so how this works, I did some research. There's currently 6 groups with 5 teams in each. Each team plays each other once, and the teams who finish in the top of their group, all 6 of them advance to the knockout round, and then 2 wildcard teams are selected to also go to the knockout round, and you have 8 teams there. So if the Pistons win against the Pacers and Bucks, they're in. If the Pistons, they have to win one, I think, to be considered as a wild card, because I'd imagine there'll be other 3-1 teams. Or maybe they could win. I have to check, but I think basically the Pistons, if they just go 4-0, which I think they can do. I think they can beat the Bucks at home. The Pacers game on the road's a tough one. But if they get to the knockout stage, those games are still counted as regular season games, and they are played at either team's arena. It's then the 4 teams who win in the knockout stage. They'll go to Las Vegas for the semi-final round, which is on the 14th of December. And then those games still count as well for the regular season. They just flex the schedule and move it around. It's then the 2 winners of the semi-finals playing the NBA Cup. That game doesn't count as a regular season game, but that game's in Vegas as well. So, I mean, I think it's a very high possibility the Pistons are in the knockout round. Now, who they play there, I'm not sure how that works with the fixturing or schedule, but I would love this team to go to Vegas. I really would. I think it'd be awesome. Like, I mean, there's so much to play for. I feel like the obviously just the experience, like the pressure is it's not a playoff game, but the playing in that kind of pressure, where the players they want to win this because they want to get that 500K prize money each. For the guys down the end of the roster, like your two-way guys, your guys on vet minimums, like that 500,000 is worth a lot to them, and so with that means there's more pressure in these games because they want to win for their teammates. So there's you can sense it. Like guys, the energy is definitely higher from the tip in those games, and the players play with more emotion. Like that's just what I've observed, at least in the Pistons. So I think all of this is great for them. So go as far as you can in this thing. Imagine if the Pistons won the NBA Cup. Like I would, that would be so much fun. I would love for them, like to get to the semifinals, and then just see what happens. Like I would love for them to get that national attention of being in Vegas where everyone is on, because I think they block out a week for the NBA Cup games. Like there's no other regular season games. So I think just having all those eyes on the Pistons, that extra pressure, that national media attention, the heightened expectation in the games, I think it would be awesome. And just as a fan, I think it'd be cool to see Cade get that platform, Jaden Ivey to get that platform. Hopefully, Asar Thompson's playing, just to show what they're made of. Because I think Cade's slowly starting to get some national attention, but it's always just nice when you see your favorite team getting some love and some praise, especially after what we've been through as Pistons fans. So I want them to win this thing, um, and I think there's a real chance they can make it to at least the first round of Vegas, but we shall see. Second thing, Cade regaining his form. I think so. In his past 5 games last week, or the past 5 games since we spoke, he's averaged 24 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, a combined 3 blocks and steals, 40% from the field, 40% from three, and 85% from first of the line. Now, he struggled a lot from the field. A lot of that was due to some um, inefficient games against the Bucks and Raptors. The Bucks game, I think he shot like 11 of 30 something. That game, I thought, it's not great, but he finished with like 35 and stuffed the box score. I think like that game he took some more shots because there was no Jaden Ivey and it was a close game and he's kind of your main guy. There's no one else really that can create shots. Like Malik Beasley was good that game, but Cade just had to shoot it. I wasn't too phased with his shot selection. Um, the Raptors game, he was honestly just bad as a scorer. Like he just had one of those games. But I thought his past 2 games against the Bulls and Wizards were really good. Um, Relatively efficient. Triple double against the Wizards. Thought yesterday against the Bulls he was, the best player for Detroit by far, on both ends. And I've spoken about it a fair bit, but just his continued buy-in defensively, I think this season has been great. Like him edging closer towards being a two-way guy is huge for this team in so many ways because of his size and the position he plays. Like, I don't think he's ever going to be like an actual lockdown defender, but just watching him be way more committed on that end, making key plays, leads the league in clutch blocks. Just that kind of stuff is huge for this team and igniting them on that end. Um, so, yeah, it's nice to see him getting it back together because last time I spoke about kind of him just losing a bit of that momentum he had to start the season a week ago. So he's bouncing back, and hopefully that field goal percentage goes up a bit more. But yeah, I think his past 2 games have been awesome, and that kind of ties me to like the final thing here before we get out of the show. The Pistons' remaining schedule this week. So they're currently at 7-9, and look, the last 3 games. Well, look, the Bulls game was a bit disappointing, but now they finally get 2 days rest. This is the first time they've had more than 1 day's rest. So they finally get some rest. They look tired against the Bulls, and I hope JB just gives them at least 1 day off to recover, because now they travel to Charlotte on Thursday. Then they play the Magic on Saturday, and then they have Toronto on Sunday, I believe. So another tough, tough couple of games. Oh, actually, I think the Raptors is on Monday. My mistake. But I think they should go 2-1. Like, I think you just have to beat the Hornets, get your revenge. You should have won that game. Cade started well and then tape it off. Like, just win that game. Beat the Hornets. That's number one. I think Orlando is going to be an extremely tough game. In the past, I honestly, since Sadiq Bey's 50-point game, I can't remember the Pistons winning in Orlando. I think most of the games have been pretty ugly because the Magic defensively have just turned into the best in the league, I think, pretty much. So they won't have Paolo, but Franz Wagner's scored 6 30-point games in a row. So, even if they don't have Paolo, they're still 9-6, I think. They just beat the Suns on the road. That's going to be a tough game. Honestly, I don't expect them to win that. But I just want them to put up a fight and show the strides they've made against a really top-tier team on the road. I think that would be huge. I don't want to put a margin on it, but just be in the game in the fourth. And just, midway through the fourth, at least have it within striking distance, and then just see what happens. I think that's what I want. I just don't want to see this, honestly, if it could be like that Bulls game we had yesterday, I'd be fine with that. The scores will be lower because of the way the Magic play, but just a game where the Pistons, they might be down, but they, tie it up in the fourth and have a real shot to win, and then maybe they win this one, maybe they don't, but that's the type of game I want to see. And then the Raptors at home, I think they should win. So I think we should, they've still got Eastern teams to play here. And, apart from the Orlando game, I think they should get a pair of wins. So if we're back here and they win 3 in a row, that'd be great. But we've seen them get the 2 straight victories now and not be able to close it out. So a pretty exciting time to be a Pistons fan, I would say, overall. Let me know your thoughts, your likes, dislike, things to keep an eye on. I'd love to hear it. But as always, please subscribe if you could. If not, thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Pistons.